We're going to introduce now our first speaker. The format we're going to have is 4 different speakers, each speaking for about 15 minutes. We'll have, first of all, we're going to have Stefan, and then we're going to have Julie afterwards. Then we'll have a short break, just so you can finish off the rest of the pizza. And then third and fourth, and then we're going to do a panel of all the Q&A all together. So the way we would like you to put forward your questions, because you might have forgotten by the time it gets to the end, is as someone is speaking, then please tweet at ProductTank EDI what your question is. So if you're, Stefan, you're like, wow, I totally disagree with everything you say, then tweet that at ProductTank EDI, and then you'll have an opportunity to have a robust exchange of information with Stefan. So, Stefan, would you like to come up? This is Stefan Sabev, who is product lead at TravelNest.
Cool. So today I'm going to be talking about product management and what that means for TravelNest and why for us it's mostly problem management, which may be something that some of you hear for the first time today, but we find this the most effective way to build products, and yeah, I'll share all of that with you today. So just as an outline, I'm going to briefly introduce myself, but that's not the whole point of the talk, so I'm going to introduce TravelNest and what we do, because we're a fairly new company, and when I was speaking to some of you, many of you didn't really know what we're doing, so I'm going to try to correct that tonight. I'm going to talk about how we do product, or in our case, problem management, what are our core principles, summarize that, and I've left, questions will come after, but if you have any, shoot them in at Twitter. So just a brief introduction to myself. I started out as a software engineer, which is a fairly classical path for someone to get into product management. I worked in data acquisition, but after you acquire so much data, you realize that there's probably better things to do, and then I moved into data science, but then I was not called a data scientist because I didn't do my stats on a Mac, so I was just a business intelligence analyst. So after that, I got presented with the opportunity to move into the B2B part of the business, which was to work with all sorts of new products, which was really, really awesome. So the first one was called Travel Insight, so that was analytics for airlines, airports. In my 1.5-year tenure, we managed to increase the revenues about 15 times, and we've serviced all sorts of clients from airlines, airports, tourist boards, or even aircraft manufacturers, and some of the kind of our partners at TravelNest currently. And then I did chatbots, which was the biggest hype wave, and I think at the last ProductTank I got brought up on stage by one of the ex-Skyscanner alumni to chat about it, so it's quite good to have this back, even though it's been like 1.5 years, but I'm really, really excited that we've got this going again. And so I joined TravelNest in the beginning of May. I stupidly didn't take any holiday between leaving my work and then jumping, so that was, again, definitely do that as well. It's pretty fun to just get dropped into the problem. And TravelNest, so we're a relatively new startup to Edinburgh. It was started as a company in Dundee, backed by 3 VCs, Pentec, Mangrove, and Frontline. Pentec are local, they've invested in FanDuel, Nutmeg, quite a few other companies, and Mangrove, Skype, and Wix, and Frontline invest in seed companies across the whole board. But what we are is we are aiming to change the way vacation rentals are currently advertised, because it's a very, very fragmented marketplace. So we've got 10, 20, 30 different websites, and a lot of our customers want to reach the best audience and their best customers and to find them. But currently that involves a hell of a lot of research, and they haven't got the clue how to do it. So what we do is we help them reach the customers that they really, really want. Next slide. So we're speaking about problem management. So just to explain briefly what is the problem that we're solving. So across the UK, the average occupancy rate is about 46%. So or 44 actually, I think. So what that means is you've got 56% of your inventory is unsold. And on average across the whole board, that means that you're leaving roughly about £37,000 on the table. And why is that a problem? Because people advertise on 20% of where the demand is. So they advertise only on big OTAs, and they don't really have the full picture, so they're not reaching all of their potential customers. So even if you do that, it's still thousands and thousands of hours of work as well. And at TravelNest, there's a very, very small team. There's only 2 of us just now. But we like to think of ourselves as problem managers, because it's quite easy to just get obsessed about the solution and to think about, well, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and not think about what the core problem actually is. And we have a very, very, kind of a few simple principles that we follow. So first of all, we don't think ourselves as problem solvers. We've got enough people, engineers, designers, who are fantastic at solving the problem, coming up with the right solutions for that. But we sit at the point where we identify the right problem to solve, to understand why exactly we're solving it, and to explain that to the rest of the business, and then make sure that we prioritize them in the right order, and then we facilitate the solution part of things as well. So I guess the way we do problem management at TravelNest, we've got very simple 5 steps. So the first one is speak to our customers, then find out what their needs are, dissect the problems, prioritize the problems, and make sure that you balance short-term and long-term goals as well. And to move on to the first one, we always have to start with the customer. So you have to talk with them regularly. So I guess just kind of a quick show of hands to improve my understanding, but just to see what the audience is like. How many of you here are either product owners or product managers? Just quick show of hands. Cool. And keep your hands if you've spoken to your customers in the last 30 days, or roughly a month. Awesome. Almost no dropout. The last week? Okay. And in today, or wow, fantastic. So a slight trickle down, but people do that, which is awesome. And we try to listen to them as much as possible. So we don't just seek validation for our hypothesis, but we're trying to underscore what the underlying need is. And David is going to talk about that later, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but just to give you an example of why you have to do that. So when I started, again, I didn't take any break, and I did some research before starting. So as soon as I came in, I was like, right, we're going to do all these things. I'm going to create the roadmap, then we're going to start. But then as soon as I started speaking to some people, I realized, well, actually, all of these things that I was thinking about were probably not the right thing for them. So I had to completely go back to the drawing board, speak to a lot more people, and make sure that we prioritize things. So I don't come up with the solutions in my head and kind of impose them, but rather find the problem. So the next step is to find out what the customer's needs are. So it's really, really kind of easy to get lost between what the product requirements are and what the customer's requirements are. And the things to keep in mind there are people may not necessarily know what is feasible, therefore they may not know what exactly the perfect solution for them is. But by finding their underlying needs and what they need to achieve, you can understand better the problem. So in our case, most of the people say, well, I want to find better customers for myself, because they may not accept stag do's, they may not accept large groups of people because of more wear and tear. But all comes down to they all need more bookings. And move to the next slide. So then, when you find that, you have to go back again and try and understand, like, okay, what they need, but what is the actual problem? Like, why can't they get what they need? So what we do is we kind of, after we speak to them, we make sure that we find the kind of right problem by speaking to more customers, validating it, but also speaking amongst themselves to see whether that makes sense. So in our case, the need is to get more bookings. And the problem is that they don't have a robust way of finding the right places to advertise their properties, therefore they can't reach the right people, therefore they can't get more bookings. So, and again, we kind of define it so that we understand it better, but also to share it across the business, because as product managers or user researchers or anyone else who's involved in customer success or any other part of the business, you have the privilege to speak to the customers on a daily basis, but not everyone has that. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that you define the problem for them, so when people are coming to the solution part, they understand their pains and they can then approach it the right way. But also, like, I think one of the lines that I really like is, like, building the right thing nowadays is better than building the thing right, because there's so many different products that you need to really nail why you're doing it and build the right thing rather than just build it right. So. Okay, and then the prioritization. So what we do at TravelNest is we use RICE, which was developed in Intercom. So that's RICE stands for Reach, Impact, Confidence, and Effort. We prioritize all of our high-level initiatives with that. So Reach stands for basically how many people is that going to reach, how many customers are you going to impact, how confident are we that we can deliver this, and then how much effort do we have to put in to make sure that we do it. And you have to be brutally honest when you do that, because otherwise it doesn't necessarily result in the right outcome for the customers. And while you're doing this, you always have to put the customers first. So again, to tie it back to an example, at TravelNest, we had a very big decision where we had to prioritize between two big projects. So one of them was an integration with a direct partner, which would have been fantastic. There wasn't as much uncertainty, which was good. We could deliver it. But then we had another option, which was to go through a third party that will give us more reach, basically will allow us to capture even more potential people, deliver more value for customers, but it was very uncertain. So at the end of the day, we put the customers first, and we didn't just say we're going to do the easy thing. We also had the option to do the two things at the same time, but then we know that doing multiple things at the same time doesn't result in as good of outcome. If you focus on one thing, you nail it, and then you move on. So in the end, what we did was we went for the solution which was harder, and we built the thing that will allow our customers to get more benefit at the sacrifice of shipping it maybe a little bit later. And it's like, so balancing the kind of short term and long term between strategy and tactics can be quite tricky, because it's easy to get stuck in the weeds. It's easy to just push stuff out, make sure that you're, the feeling of progress is amazing because you get stuff out, you get the reactions, but you always need to tie it back to the strategy. So every week, every 2 weeks, or every month, think about how is that moving us into the right direction? Is it a thing that will get us to our vision? Or is it more of a distraction that, it may be good for now, but it may not be the right thing to do long term. So again, put your customers first and do the thing that will get you to your vision closer. So, next one. And I guess the key takeaways for this is like the way we do problem management is we go back to the root of everything, which is speak to our customers, make sure that you understand what they do, speak to them often, find out what their needs are, then dissect it, explain the problem, make sure that everyone understands it, and then after you do that, prioritize the problems, because the big problem then gets split into multiple ones. Make sure that you're working on the right things first, and then move on to the next one. Don't parallelize too much, and then balance the short-term and the long-term goals. So always update your strategy based on your tactics and vice versa. And I think one of the important takeaways is like, don't get too fixated on solving problems. Solving problems is absolutely fantastic, but as product and problem managers, what we need to understand is we need to find the right things to do rather than just think about how we solve them. So that may be controversial, but I think for us it's quite beneficial to make sure that we understand it before we build it. And yeah, that concludes my chat around problem management. If you have any questions afterwards, shoot them at Twitter, and yeah, I'll be happy to answer them in the Q&A.